ever woken up from a dream and you just have this nagging sense that there was something in that dream you were supposed to remember, and you're not in the habit of like remembering your dreams? Maybe you even don't think you dream at all, but you wake up and you have kind of this sense that there's like a message there. There's something that you're supposed to remember or think about, or maybe even you wake up and it's a problem you've been really struggling with. Like all of a sudden, aha, you know exactly what you want to do with that. Those experiences are not unique. And in fact, there are dream coaches and dream analysts across the world that help people to really access the internal wisdom of those dreams. Well, today's guest, Debbie Spector Weisman, is also one of these dream life coaches. And I invited her on the podcast today to help illuminate for us what it is about this dream exploration. And she even talks today about dream incubation, which is really interesting. How is that going to be helpful to you in moving from this discomfort of midlife into a centered life thriving? Well, Debbie's going to explain all of that to us today. So keep listening. Welcome. This is Midlife Crisis to a Centered Life Thriving, a podcast that teaches women in midlife to unapologetically stop silencing their dreams and start designing the lives they want to live in. I'm your host, Dr. Natalie, and as a clinical psychologist of the last 2 decades and a twice divorced single mother myself, I not only know how hard it can feel heading into midlife, I am living it right here with you. I have taken all the many failed attempts and lessons learned in my own life and combine it with my extensive clinical experience to give you the tools you need to make midlife the best time in your life. No joke. So let's get started.
Are you on my mailing list yet? Because if you're not, you really should be. You want to join at learntoloveyourstory.com. If you scroll down, I'm giving away a freebie for you. Honestly, you know what it is? A free course. I sell online courses, but this is a course just for you. And it's about freeing yourself, letting go of what others' expectations and ideas are for you. You know, that nagging self-doubt in your head, it's usually fueled by your consideration of what others think of you over your consideration of what you think of you. And so I teach you in my video all about what is underlying that kind of self-doubt and how to get out of that conundrum. And I give you a workbook that goes with it that helps you to build the skill sets that you're going to need for that. So please make sure you're on my mailing list, because at the least, you're going to get a free gift. And at the most, you're going to hear about all the things that we're doing on Midlife Crisis to a Centered Life Thriving and learntoloveyourstory.com. And you don't want to be missing out on any of the new things that'll be coming your way.
Today, I have a real treat for us. The guest that I have invited to speak with us is Debbie Spector Weisman, and she is a dream life coach. That's right, a dream life coach. So let me tell you a little bit about Debbie. Dream work is her third career. She has been a magazine writer and editor, author of 21 highly successful young adult novels, and the co-owner of a film and video post-production company. So she's had a lot of things that she's been doing across the years. But it was a dream that she had during a personal crisis of her own that transformed her from a shy and quiet woman to the fully self-expressed, empowered person that she is today. She was inspired to get certified as a dream life coach to help others achieve what they want out of life. So that is really why I invited her to be on the podcast today. I would like for Debbie to share with us about this personal journey, how she became a dream life coach, and how in becoming a dream life coach, she's helping others and maybe can help you. So without further ado, Let's meet Debbie. Welcome back, everybody, to Midlife Crisis to a Centered Life Thriving. Debbie Spector Weisman is here with us today. She is a dream life coach. I am really excited to hear more about her story and more about what she might have to offer us in our own journeys from a midlife crisis to a centered life thriving. So without further ado, Debbie, please tell us your story.
Oh, I would love to, Natalie. I hope you have hours and hours and hours for it, but I'll try to make it brief as possible. As you said, I'm a dream life coach, and I consider it my third career. I spent a good part of my life being a working writer and editor. My husband and I also have a film video post-production company, and I spent many years doing the non-creative business part of running that company. And about 20 years or so ago, I sort of had an opportunity to ask myself the question, is this really what I want to do? And if not, what do I want to do? And it got me onto a journey of self-discovery.
Mm-hmm.
And I should also add that for most of my life, I was very, very quiet, very shy. I didn't speak up unless people spoke to me, and I didn't, volunteer myself very much. Didn't mean I was non-functioning. I was a successful writer, a successful business person, but I did feel that, there was something missing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like I said, I went on this journey and looked at different various modalities of things. And about 10 years into this process, my husband actually got hired to direct a movie called Dreaming Heaven. It was a documentary about a spiritual journey down to Teotihuacan, Mexico.
Aha.
And which is a story into itself, but we'll get to that maybe later.
I'm sure.
And one of the participants in the journey was a dream worker, although you didn't know it in the documentary itself, but I got to meet her afterwards. And at the time I was living in LA, and she was just moving back to LA and was starting to do dream circles, which are gatherings where people get together and share their dreams.
Interesting.
Asked me if I wanted to join. I said, sure, why not? It sounds good. At that point, I hadn't really been paying that much attention to my dreams. I could remember dreams every now and again, but they were just dreams. It's like, nice, whatever, go on with it. But through the dream circle, I really got to understand that dreams really have meanings. And if we pay attention to our dreams, we can really learn a lot about ourselves and gain some insights and all kinds of things.
Yeah.
So I got into it, started to remember my dreams more, wrote them down, and discuss them in the group. The woman, her name is Kelly Sullivan Walton. She's a very noted dream worker, and she has a program to learn about dreams and to become certified as a coach.
Mm-hmm.
I decided to take the program not so much because I wanted to be a coach, but just because I wanted to learn more about dreams. It's fascinating to me because I'm just learning all these great things. During the course of the study, I had what I like to call the dream that changed my life. And what was incredible about this dream was that, unlike most dreams that a lot of people have, they weren't this great epic story that started at point A and went to point Z and then went back to point M.
Yep.
Or it wasn't even this, fantastic, imagery or anything like that. It wasn't even a picture at all. It was just one word. It's all I remembered from the dream was one word.
Interesting.
But it was such a weird word. I said, this must mean something to me. Well, the word was codpiece. Now, I don't know if you know what a codpiece is.
No, I off the top of my head, no, I do not know what a codpiece is.
I didn't know what it meant.
And that is such a weird word. You would have to have that stick in your head.
I didn't know what it meant at the time. So, looked it up. And a codpiece is a garment that was either made out of metal or leather that men in the Middle Ages wore to protect their genital areas. And in the more modern connotation of the word, it was also a prop that a lot of heavy metal singers would also wear on stage. If you look at old Ozzy Osbourne videos,
Yeah.
you'll see he's got this thing in
Then
front of him. That's the name of that's called a codpiece.
okay.
Anyway,
All right.
so when you're trying to figure out what a dream means, you always ask yourself, well, how does this relate to me?
Yeah.
Well, how did the codpiece relate to me? I wasn't a man. I didn't have any
Yeah,
like that. And,
exactly.
I love history, but Middle Ages wasn't particularly my, great area of
Cup of tea.
interest.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, well, what does this mean? So then I had to think about, well, what is the codpiece to a man? Well, I finally figured out the codpiece was something strong, something rigid that was used to protect something precious, which in the case of the man, of course, his genitals, of course, the most precious thing they have.
Truth.
And how to relate to me? Well, remember, I said at that point I was very quiet and didn't really speak up. I said to myself, I am using a codpiece, which is maybe this invisible codpiece, but still this thing that I'm
Yeah.
using as a rigid thing to keep me from the rest of the world, me being this precious being. I
Yeah.
thought. And I said, well, if I don't want to live that way, I have to break out of the codpiece
Hmm.
and figure out how to do it. Well, once you get a, aha moment from a dream like that, it's not like, okay, one day I'm shy, next day I'm a flaming extrovert. Yeah, it
No.
wasn't quite like, but
No,
it
it
did
doesn't work that way.
it did, yeah, right. It did start me on that journey. And I started to say, yeah, I don't have any, because it also brought up the fear. Why am I holding myself back? Well,
Right.
fear is always the biggest thing. Well, then I got into examining what I might have been afraid of and everything. I said, well, okay, I don't have to be afraid of that. And I'd speak up a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And, so this really had great changes in my life. And I said to myself, if I can have this kind of a breakthrough from a dream, I have to help others show what dreams can do for them. So
Right.
it got me on the coaching journey, and I got certified in that. I got some other certificates subsequent to that, set me on that road. I'm never going to be that flaming extrovert. I don't think I want to be the flaming extrovert, but I am a lot more self-expressive. I'd never be
Right.
talking to you now. That person
Yeah.
20 years ago would not have been talking to you now. So, that is in a nutshell my story. So now, I
That's
do
a
help people
that's a
understand that.
really well, it's very unique, can we say? Like not everybody has a dream, but a word that they've never heard and then is able to extrapolate from that kind of, oh, this is my aha moment. I'm covering myself up. I'm not showing my, letting myself be vulnerable and showing myself to the world. And that is not maybe serving me at this stage in my life.
Exactly. And it also brings up the point that I want to stress is that dreams are important, and it's important to pay attention to our dreams. Before I had met Kelly, before I started getting into the dream circle, I may have had that dream. I may have remembered the word when I woke up. I may have not remembered the word, but I might have said
Yeah.
to myself, gee, that was weird.
Hmm.
And just have left it like that without realizing that was my subconscious giving me a message that said, you have to pay attention to this.
Yes. Yeah. In your bio, you say that there was also kind of a moment in time when all of this was happening that was stressful for you. So was there any piece of that was like a catalyst? Like, my podcast is called Midlife Crisis to a Centered Life Thriving. And I think not that everybody has to have a midlife crisis. Obviously, I'm not saying that all of us get to that point, but we do get kind of a discomfort, right? In midlife, when the ways that we've done things up until this point kind of are not going to serve us anymore or just won't work in the way that we want them to. There's discomfort around us that then also might be a catalyst for change. Was that also a piece for you? Or was it just this discovery of Kelly and dream analysis that really inspired that?
Well, like I said, the point 10 years earlier to that, when I was questioning, who am I and what's going on, that was actually sparked by another movie that we worked on, which was a movie called What the Bleep Do We Know? I don't know if you're aware of
Oh,
it.
I am and love that movie. I didn't realize that you were a part of that.
Well,
Yes.
here's the story of that. Like I said, my husband and I have a video post-production business. We were hired to do the post-production supervision on that movie. At the time, I knew zero about the subject matter of the movie. So when we got into it and I started to watch it, this was just like aha moment after aha moment. You mean
Right.
we can change the way we feel about ourselves? We can change
Hmm.
our beliefs? Because at that point, I was the ultimate fatalist. Life was
Yes.
spread out there, and that's all there was. So that was, that's what got me on the journey to realize that things can be different. You know,
Right.
that, I have a power within myself I didn't realize I had.
Yeah.
And that
It
was what got me started.
it was such an interesting documentary for like converging experts, right? Like quantum physicists and Candace Pert, who is now has passed, but she was in that as well in that documentary. And
Oh
I
yeah, she's
really love her
wonderful.
stuff about the molecules of emotion. And she just kind of brings emotion and the energetics of emotional feeling down to a biological underpinning, and then helps us understand like literally every cell in your body has receptor sites for this. So, why would your toe have a receptor site for excitement and joy and what, like it doesn't make any sense that this is only your brain and nervous system. Your whole body mind is what's engaged in bringing in information, interpreting and perceiving information and manifesting what that is. So it was an interesting documentary for my listeners here. If you haven't seen it, I don't know where you scope it out, probably Gaia now on Amazon or something like that. One of
Yeah.
those kind of more spiritually based or
Well,
yeah,
last I heard, I mean,
those kind of channels.
Gaia did buy it like 10 years ago. So
Did they?
I don't know
Yeah.
if it's still there.
It's been a minute, and I know that there have been other documentaries like it, but it really is helpful in understanding that everything is energy, and so thought is energy, and the way that our mindset is an integral part of how we experience the world. So, as you just mentioned, like if you get into kind of that fatalist mindset, or even just a concrete mindset of like, my destiny is already here and there's nothing I can do to change anything. Like, so you look around and you see, things you don't like about your life. You're like, well, that's just how it's going to be. Instead of understanding, with a growth mindset, no, I get to like be an inventor and a changer of the experiences that I'm having. That's
Yeah,
fantastic. I didn't
that
realize
was
that
just
you had
such an
done that.
exciting concept to understand and grasp because, like I said, all my life up to that point was no,
No.
you can't do that. It's fixed. It's, their circumstances may change, but you can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
It's letting life live you instead of you living your life.
Exactly. I love that. Letting life live you instead of you living your
Yeah.
life. That it's very true though. We can just kind of, get stuck in those places for sure. So 10 years prior to becoming a dream coach or going into that, the crisis was like, oh, is this all they're going to be? And feeling fatalistic. You had some, synchronicities like being on that documentary or, being a participant in the production of that documentary. And then 10 years later, you kind of found your niche with the dream coaching. Tell us about dream coaching and what is it that you do, and what is it that maybe my listeners, here have never heard before that is something that they could seek out in coaching.
Sure. Let me just do a little preface about dreams in general and get into it. Because one of the questions that I always had, or the statements I always get whenever I tell people, help them understand their dreams, it's like, oh, I don't dream, or I don't remember my dreams. Well, scientific fact, we all dream anywhere from 3 to 9 dreams a night, depending on our sleep cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason we probably don't remember our dreams, or most people don't, is because they don't believe the dreams are important.
Yeah.
Uh, because if you don't, you're telling your subconscious, don't let me remember them. And if you have a dream that you may remember it, and you don't write it down, you don't pay attention to it, you're training yourself. This isn't
Mm-hmm.
important. I don't need to pay attention to it. And that's kind of like, my theory about nightmares is that because we do dream all the time, our subconscious is sending us messages that we're ignoring them. But if there's something really going on that we need to address, we'll get a nightmare because that's going to be so scary that we're going to remember it. And our subconscious is saying, you need to pay attention to this.
Yeah.
I'm giving you this nightmare so you'll remember it and pay attention to it. And even then, most people will just say, oh, this is scary, this is horrible, and not. But if you do pay attention to all your dreams, particularly your nightmares, if you pay attention to your nightmare, you're getting a valuable piece of information and insight that can really either solve a pressing problem that you have going on with you, or giving you a very important insight into your own behavior or your own beliefs that need to be addressed at that point.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm a trauma therapist by trade, and I have training in what we call EMDR, or eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy, which is a specific kind of trauma therapy. And Dr. Francine Shapiro, who created that therapy, kind of hypothesized that in REM sleep, which is when dreaming is happening and your eyes are rapidly moving back and forth, it's really the brain and nervous system's time for organizing things that are difficult for us, or things that we learned throughout the day. I mean, your day could have been completely joyful, but it's like packing it away and integrating it into the wholeness of who we are as a self. I don't know if you've ever seen Inside Out. There's a new one that just came out. Therapists love this movie, or movie series now, because there's a 1 and a 2. It's a cartoon for kids, but essentially it's like all of these little emotions in our brain, and they're all trying to figure out what to do with the memories at the end of every day and during the sleep cycle. And very much so, that is the hypothesis, is that like there are parts of us that are kind of integrating that into the whole of who we are as a person. And so it's happening, whether you have conscious awareness of that or not. And what I'm hearing you say is, part of your job as a coach is to help people both understand that this is happening, but also maybe to train them to be more consciously aware, like start to track dreams and try to write things down or try to recall things. Maybe that first moment in the morning when it might still be, there's a remnant of it that is still there somewhere in their mind. Because otherwise, you can't access that stuff. But Francine's hypothesis says that it gets interrupted when there's trauma. So then it doesn't get integrated into ourself as a whole. And that's why EMDR therapy kind of replicates that in the therapy room, since REM sleep didn't do it for you. But I think all of us kind of just are on autopilot with what's going on in this really miraculous organ in our head, and in our body mind. Yeah.
Well, dreams, there's so many different ways we can use our dreams. Yes, problem solving is a very critical one, and I help people who, they usually come to you because there's some issue. It's
absolutely,
you're having a wonderful life. You don't need a coach. But usually, or some incident, maybe some incident has come up that needs to be addressed. And so problem solving is key, but there are so many other ways we can use our dreams. I use dreams a lot for creativity. And, there's so many stories of, writers and musicians and artists who have used their dreams for their own creative output. Go through history. And not just that, but scientists, Albert Einstein came up with the theory of relativity. There's a spark of it in a dream. There's through history, there's just so many instances of dreams that have made a difference in humanity. because people have paid attention to them. So I like to use dreams for, my own creativity. I do some writing, and, if I'm stuck on an idea, I'll come up with it. People use dreams for healing. I know a lot of people who have uncovered, illnesses, or that, the thought that they had the illness came up in the dream. And of course, it was confirmed by, doctors afterwards. And there's even a story of one of the first people I met when I first became a coach, a woman named Kathleen Candace O'Keefe. She had this dream. She wrote a lot about this, where she had these dreams that, she had breast cancer. And she went to the doctors, and, they did mammographies, they did MRIs, they did all the scientific tests, and didn't see anything. And she left, but then had continued to have the dreams where the dreams were insisting, no, you have to go back and you have to tell them you want exploratory surgery. And she did that. And of course, doctors like, oh, you're kidding. I can't do that. That's like bordering on being unethical to just cut a person.
Yeah.
But she was so insistent that, the doctor agreed. And sure enough, they found cancer.
Wow.
It was, undetectable in any other way. But she found it in her dream. But she's not the only one who has had stories like this. There are other people who've also uncovered it, and then you get into premonition dreams where, the classic stories, and this hasn't happened to me, but I've heard about these where, people dream about having a car accident and they remember the specifics of it, like, oh, it was a red fire engine that went through, a red light. And 2 weeks later, they're in an intersection and they see this red fire engine. And because they remembered the dream, they stopped, even though they had the right of way.
Yeah.
And prevented the accident from happening.
So crazy. That is remarkable when you think about that. That is just remarkable.
It is. And then you get into lucid dreaming, which is a whole subject in and of itself, where that lucid dreaming is when you realize you are dreaming while you're in the dream. And, there's some debate about how much you can control what happens in a lucid dream, but you can do things in a lucid dream that you can't do in your regular life.
Right.
The number one thing that people do in lucid dreams is fly.
Yes.
Go flying, because you can do it, or go through walls and do amazing things. The second most popular thing that people do in lucid dreams is have sex.
Oh,
maybe have sex with people they would never have sex with in real life, but they could do it in your dreams, and it's as equally satisfying as it is, if you were doing it in your waking life. And then there are people who, astral project and go to all kinds of places. And I think the podcast that's on my latest podcast, I interviewed a woman who goes astral dreaming every night.
Wow.
Goes to all kinds of fantastic places. And she's an artist and uses these images in her art.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, and you do have a podcast, and is that usually who you're interviewing, is just individuals that are going to talk about their dreams, and then you help kind of coach them on the podcast, or just you're exploring it?
No, the podcast is where I interview experts, and it's really all areas of empowerment. I do a lot of shows about dreams, but they're not all about dreams. I'll do other kinds of things, from meditation to Reiki to mindset, all kinds of different things where I talk to experts about them. Originally, I was going to do a show where I talked about dreams. I could not, or talk about people's dreams specifically. Couldn't get enough people to get.
I know. It's hard to be vulnerable, right? I mean, let's go back to your codpiece. I think a lot of us have some version of that. And so I've tried myself to have individuals that want to have some coaching done, just do it here on the podcast and benefit all my listenership. But it's a vulnerable thing to do that. So you can't always get enough volunteers to make a
It is.
podcast out of that.
It's one thing to do it when you're in a private coaching session. It's another to do it when you're,
Yes,
speaking to, thousands of people out there who may be
exactly.
hearing you.
Exactly. So what I'm hearing, and you correct me if I'm off base here, what I'm hearing is that one of the things that dream coaching can help with is to bring more self-awareness to the individual. You're accessing information that's there for your taking, but you might not have the skill sets yet to be able to access that information. And that information can be a version of internalized wisdom. It was in your case with the codpiece. It seems like, even in some of those examples, that things that came up when we focused, or when you were helping someone focus in on their dreams, really is an internalized intuition of what's best next.
Very much so. And, I help when I work with people, I help them remember their dreams. If they're not remembering their dreams already, you can learn how to do it. Because it
Yes, you
is
can.
literally training your brain. And
Mm-hmm.
there's some techniques that work to do that. And then the most important thing is to start keeping a dream journal, writing down your dreams. And even if you don't remember your dreams, just write down, the first thing when you wake up, because that's always going to give you insight. And the more you do that, the more you'll start to see some patterns develop.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even if you're not just looking at one particular dream, over the course of times you might see, well, that there's a lot of relatability between the
Yeah.
dreams. That's going to give you a lot of insight.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I work is, when I help people understand their dreams, show them how they can understand their dreams. Because when I talk, people will say, "Oh, you're a dream interpreter." Well, not really, because
Yeah.
I don't tell people what their dreams mean. I guide people. I ask them a lot of questions, because it's not going to mean anything if I tell them, "Oh, I think this dream means this," because
Yeah.
that's my feeling. That's my
Yeah.
opinion. It's not going to really resonate with them until they get that understanding. So, I'll question them and lead them along. And I may have an idea of what I might think it means, and if so, I'll guide them in that direction to the point where they will have their own aha moment. They'll say, "Oh,
Right.
I think this might mean this." And then we talk about, well, how do we use this information? How do we put it into action? Because even a dream that's understood is just a nice little story unless we
Right.
take action on it. And
Yeah. So how do you take action with dreams? That was kind of my next question for you was, it's helpful to have more self-awareness and have your unconscious mind basically bring into your conscious awareness things you might not be aware you're working through at night while you're dreaming. But
right.
is there a reverse? Is there like now that you know that information, can you use dreams in some way to be helpful to you in problem solving?
Yes. Well, first of all, so how do you take it in action? If you have a dream that maybe is revealing to you that you have anger issues, well, then, the next step is, well, let's work on helping you get rid of those anger issues or
Sure,
process,
sure.
or some other kind of emotional thing that is keeping you stuck or holding you or preventing you from doing something. The dream might also give you an insight into how to solve the problem. And then you'll be able to do that just as a specific, how specific dreams could be. A couple of months ago, my husband and I were having an issue with one of our clients, and we were both kind of stuck on, what's the best way to approach this and how to deal with this. And that night, I had a dream where, in my dream, I crafted the email to write to this client the next day, and
Yes.
wrote it, remembered it, and it was the right thing to say. And I
Yes.
wasn't thinking about that in my conscious mind, but my dreaming mind revealed that to me. So that's a specific of
Yes.
a practical thing that a dream will do. Uh, but the other way to use dreams, and this is also something that's really kind of fun and exciting too, is a process called dream incubation. And this is
Hmm.
pretty much where you program yourself to use the dream to deal with something you're dealing with. Let's say, for example, you're wondering, should I quit my job? You can ask your dreaming mind, this question. And there's a whole process for doing it because it's not just a matter of saying, okay, should I quit my job? No, what you do is before you have the dream, you spend some time meditating on this. So you ask, well, what would happen? Why, what are the benefits? What are the downfalls? Why should this be something I want to do at this time? You journal about it and write about it. And then right before you go to bed, you synthesize your question into a one sentence question. And maybe it's as simple as, should I quit my job? Write it down. I like to put it under my pillow.
Okay.
There are other people who do this, who actually create what they call like a dream box. And it's a little box they put next to their bed, and they decorate it so it's a very, special thing. And they'll put the question in that box. And
Got it.
And then right before you fall asleep, you repeat that question to yourself, as you're there, just, closing your eyes, trying to get to sleep. You repeat that question. If you're a pretty active dreamer, chances are you'll get a response that night. If you're not, it may take a night or two, but you'll get an insight. You'll get a dream that's going to give you an insight into that. It may not be a yes or no, but it might be a dream where the understanding of the dream is going to give you that yes or no answer.
Right.
So, and you can use that with all kinds of, situations that may come up for you. So, I mean, that's what I love about dreams, because I'm a practical person. And so I use dreams in a very practical way. I'm not that person who does the astral traveling, because it really, it hasn't interested me to that point. Maybe someday it will, but, everybody can use dreams in the way that works best for them.
Right. Well, that's what I was curious about. I mean, I've heard things like that you can kind of ask in your dreaming mind to figure that out. And it matches that, scientific hypothesis I was talking about earlier by Dr. Francine Shapiro, that is kind of a function of REM sleep, is to make sense of the things that don't make sense to us, or that we haven't logically and rationally been able to fix in our waking hours, that our sleep hours might tap into all parts of ourselves and other memories and other ways of thinking about things that we're just not accessing during our waking hours, and then make sense of it. Like, oh, this is how you should write that email. This is why you should not take this job, or, definitely you should be leaving this job, or whatever it is that you're asking about. So that's neat. That's really neat.
Yeah. And then, there are people who will use their dreams to access, their spiritual healers or their guides. And they may have guides that go back, generations. They may have guides that have come from other planets. And the guides will give them insights and wisdom that they don't get in their waking hours. So there is accessing internalized wisdom, and possibly accessing some sort of collective wisdom outside of yourself as well, through these processes of examining your dreams. Yes.
Yeah.
And like I said, there's so many different ways that we can use dreams, which is why it's fascinating. And I'm continually learning more and more about it as I go along also.
Yeah. Well, isn't that the joy, though, of doing what we do? Is just you're ever evolving. You're not staying static in any way, shape, or form.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even in the area of lucid dreaming, when I was first studying, we were talking about the percentage was 5% of people have lucid dreams, and then the pandemic happened, and all of a sudden dreaming became another big topic, because people were not relying on alarm clocks. So they were having a natural sleep, and then could actually remember dreams that maybe they wouldn't remember if their alarm woke them up.
Right.
And, and then the whole idea of, lucid dreaming became a very popular topic.
Right.
And the reason why it was at 5% was that was the idea that was people who had lucid dreams naturally.
Gotcha.
Maybe 5% of it. When I first became a coach, one of my first clients with somebody who's a lucid dreamer, and she was doing it since childhood. It was like, her idea was, doesn't everybody do this?
Yeah.
It was like, no, it
No,
doesn't.
not everybody does
Yeah.
this. But you
Yeah.
wouldn't know. I mean, you don't know if that's your experience. You're like, yeah, maybe everybody does this. And then you learn, no, not everybody knows they're dreaming while they're dreaming. There are a few exceptions to that for myself, where I've been in it and know I'm in it, but not very many times has that happened to me. And I'm certainly, I'm a preacher of journaling, but I've never gotten into dream journaling and writing down your dreams in the morning. But you're inspiring me yet again to revisit that, because there is information in that. Like you said, there's patterns that you'll start to see. And you'll just know, like, oh yeah, my brain and body mind is trying to work this piece out for me, or this thing. And having better awareness of that helps you to better address those things too.
Right. And like I said earlier, even if you don't remember your dream, if you just write down the first thought you have when you wake up, that can be very valuable as well.
Yeah.
And then the more you do that, the more, again, you're training your brain to start to pay attention to your subconscious.
Yeah. So one of the other questions that I ask all of my expert guests is, what advice do you have for a woman in midlife that is kind of in this stuck place, is feeling the discomfort of, my old ways of doing things aren't working, asking herself the question, is this all there is? And just doesn't know how to get to that next place. What would be your advice for that woman?
Well, it would be to believe that your dreams are important. Believe that you have powers within yourself that you don't realize that you have, and you can access them through your dreams. Start paying attention to your dreams. You can go to my website. I've got a little infographic on 10 steps to remember your dreams, get you on the road to that. And just believe that you have powers within yourself, and you are special, and believe in yourself.
Yeah. And go from there. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, by the way, Debbie, for being on our podcast. Tell my listeners, how can they find you?
Sure. Well, you can go to my website, which is thedreamcoach.net. And like I said, I've got all kinds of information on there to access, and blogs that go back a bunch of years with all kinds of information about dream work and how to use it. I'm on social, Dream with Debbie on Facebook, The Dream Coach on Insta. You go to listen to my podcast, Dream Power Radio. It's available everywhere. Just Google Dream Power Radio. It'll come right up. Yeah. And there's such, expert advice on everybody from there, not just me, but everybody. Because I believe we all need all the help we can get to be the people we want to be. And I would like to say my best way of doing it is through dream work. And I hope you take advantage of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And we'll make sure that all of those links to the website, the podcast, the social media are all on the notes for today's podcast, so that people can easily link to you, Debbie, if they want to pursue, more investigation about this idea of dreams and how they can be a powerful tool in our toolbox as we're journeying into that best life that we want to create for ourselves in this second act of life. So thank you again for being on the podcast. It's been a real pleasure having you and interviewing you today. So thank you for being on.
Oh, you're quite welcome. I've enjoyed it so much.
Yes, thank you. Oh, that was great, wasn't it? I really enjoyed having Debbie on the podcast. And it's inspired me to want to be better about writing down those dreams and starting to train my brain to recall what that content is and see, what is my body mind? What's its wisdom that I just, in my conscious awareness and my waking hours, am not tapping into, because I think it's there. I really do, folks. And I know that, the premise of it, as I talked in the podcast, is that during REM sleep, it is a way that our brain is organizing all of this information we've learned, our memories, our experiences, into the fabric of who we are as people. Well, if in midlife, what you're trying to do is transcend that, right? You're trying to kind of move into your second act and be a different version of yourself, a version that feels more centered and a little less pulled in all these directions and roles that you have been up until this point. It's really useful to use that material that's coming out in dreams for that process. And as Debbie showed you, you can even incubate some ideas of what you want to learn about, what you want your internalized wisdom in your dreams to tell you about by planting ideas and asking your mind and your body-mind questions to be answered during those dream states. So I think that there's a lot of power here. And this tool is free and available to you right away. All the links to her website, her podcasts, and blogs and other things, social media, all are on the notes. And I would really encourage you to do a little bit more investigating. Read a couple of her blogs, listen to a couple of the podcasts. You'll learn a little bit more about this idea. And it might be something that you want to bring into your repertoire of tools as you're trying to lead that centered life thriving. Because I am a licensed clinical psychologist in the state of Minnesota, I have to make sure at the end of each of these episodes that I give you the disclaimer that none of the material that I talk about in these podcasts is meant to replace any kind of therapy or formal medical or mental health treatment. And in fact, anything that I offer on my website, my coaching programs, any kind of psychoeducational materials that I release are not a replacement for that level of care. So just take that into account when you listen. This is information for you, and hopefully you find it of value, both as an educational tool and for your entertainment. And I also want to mention that if anyone you know is in a mental health crisis, needs additional help, I always include these 2 crisis resources. They're available to anybody. Pick up the phone and dial 988 for the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. And you can always visit their website at suicidepreventionlifeline.org. Additionally, there's actually a crisis text line. So if you're not somebody that likes to pick up the phone, text HOME, home, to 741-741 to the crisis text line. And you can find them online at crisistextline.org. Thank you for listening to my podcast, and I hope that you like and follow me wherever you get your podcasts, and maybe consider leaving me a review. It always helps me to keep this podcast relevant when I know what you want to hear about.